Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Cabin Fever Crochet with me, Helene here. And as you can see, this is another one of my Beyond Crochet shares. And today I wanted to bring with you this just fun, interesting, and unusual apple pie recipe. And it's really quite healthy as far as pies go, and it has just minimal ingredients. There is one that is a specialty ingredient, and I'll go over that with you. And I found this pie in an equally unusual place here on YouTube, and a relaxation type of video, and I will leave the link below to just super sweet young women, and they do a lot of themed type of videos, and it's interesting and quite relaxing to me. So I messaged them and asked if it would be all right to take this recipe and do a tutorial for it on YouTube, a little demonstration here. And so thumbs up on that, and I've not seen anything like it before, but as with most things, I take the basic and then I kind of do my own thing with it to my own taste, and I always like to play around with flavors and add a little of this and a little of that to it. And also, because I have food allergies, I usually have to modify as well. So I've made this twice. I did the apple pie version, and then my husband had a great idea to do a berry version. So we took the berry kefir, which is one of the main ingredients that you'll need. So instead of the plain for the apple pie, we took berry, and then we added mixed berries, strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, add a little lemon, and that came out really well also. But my favorite so far is the apple pie. And if you like this recipe, please in the comment section below, if you would, let me know if you'd like me to demo a couple of other ideas that I have, one for a really decadent version, and then one for even more like a summery, coconutty, super like kind of fresh and tart version too. We're having our neighbors over, and we haven't had a get-together since last December, at least, maybe even might have been Thanksgiving before that. So we're looking forward to it. I've set everything up on our covered patio and spaced out the chairs nicely, set up a little table, so we're going to have our spread. So if you'd like to see all the different fixins and all that good stuff, there'll be a little clip at the end. Okay, so I'm going to adjust the camera in a couple minutes so you can really see kind of up close on this, but first I want to go over a couple ingredients. Now the kefir, if you haven't heard of it, if you're not familiar, it is liquefied yogurt basically, and it comes in different flavors. Now we'll need the plain for the apple pie recipe, and it has so many healthful benefits, super low in sugar. Now you don't need to buy such a big size, but because I have seen other brands, and there may be even more beyond what I've seen, but Bolthouse, they carry just like the 8-ounce size. And then, as far as sweetener goes, you can use regular white sugar, which is what the recipe calls for, or you can use agave syrup, which is lower on the glycemic. You can use brown rice syrup, which I have, and that works out just as well with the brown rice syrup or the sugar. But instead of regular white sugar, because I am sensitive to too much sugar, I've been into using monk fruit lately. And if you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend looking it up, checking into it. But it's 0 net carbs, 0 glycemic, 0 calorie, and it's a 1-to-1 sugar replacement. So if it calls for 1 cup of sugar, you use 1 cup of the monk fruit. And so that is what I'm going to be using today, and I'll go over each ingredient as I add them. All right, so let's get to this pie making. All right, here we go after washing my hands for the umpteenth time. As far as flours go, you can use regular or you can use gluten-free. I've done both. consistency and texture work up to about the same. And I actually like the gluten-free better. For some reason, it just tasted lighter and less dense. But whichever you use, when you go to measure, just kind of lightly spoon that into your measuring cup. And you don't want to heavily pack that. You don't want to shake it down either, because then it will be too dry. And now in the recipe on the channel where I saw it, everything was in metric, so I've already done the conversion for you. And so 50 grams of butter is equivalent to 1/4 cup, and I recommend you have that softened. You can let it soften at room temperature. If you have a microwave, maybe start by 8 seconds and see how that feels, and then maybe go another 5 or 6 seconds, and that's all it takes. You don't want it hot. It'll scramble your eggs unless you temper them. And okay, now for the sugar, or whatever your sugar substitute, you will need a little over 3/4 of a cup, between 3/4 and 1 cup, or 200 grams. And you can cut back. Now this is just about that. It's 0.85 cups of sugar. And I actually, when I used the brown rice syrup, I used a 1/2 cup, and I thought it was quite tasty, but I prefer my desserts to not be overly sweet anyway. But you know, if you're making it for the first time, you might want to go with the full amount. Okay, so you want to cream together your butter and your sugar. Just get that pretty well mixed together. You will need 2 eggs, and that's whether you're doing gluten-free or regular. You don't have to beat them first. 2 large eggs. Okay. Can you hear the birds chirping? I'm outside, I have the window open. And then now this is an add-on, if I can open it. Okay, about a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Okay, and I always go for the pure Madagascar vanilla. Just awesome flavor. Okay, and you want to cream these together. Also, just get that mixed. Do the wet ingredients first. Okay. Now you can add your kefir. Again, that would be a little over 1 cup, or 250 ml, and this is the plain. And I let that set out at room temperature also. I just think that things cook more evenly if you start out with ingredients at room temperature, unless called for the recipe otherwise, and evenly, and then it cooks more according to the cooking time, because that way it doesn't have to get to room temperature in your oven first before it actually starts baking. That makes sense. Okay, so get that all nice and mixed up. And then you will need baking powder. I think it's about 1 teaspoon. It didn't say in the original recipe, so that's what I went for. If you're using regular flour, if you're using gluten-free flour, then I say 1.5. That's what I did. That's what I'm going to do today. So you can, there's 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And then flour, that's the same, and regardless if you're using, again, a 1-to-1 substitute, if you're using gluten-free, and that's what I'm using. So it is 250 grams, or 2 cups, and I really like the Bob's Red Mill gluten-free 1-to-1 substitute. So again, it's the equal amounts, regular flour to gluten-free flour, and then I want to slowly incorporate that. Just add a little bit of thyme, mix that in. Don't overbeat this. You don't want to beat it to death here, okay? Don't overmix. That can make your batter be kind of tough. Now this has a pungent smell to it because of the liquefied yogurt. Once you add the spices and the apples, it will all come together. Now while I'm mixing this up, as far as apples go, now the original recipe that I saw, okay, she just did the pie, which is kind of almost like a custardy type base. Similar to that, not exact, but similar. And she did not add apples to the mix. She added them just decoration on the top only, but I am going to do both because I want more fruit in it. More of that appley goodness through and through. So I took about four medium-sized apples, peeled, cored, and sliced. Okay, I already have those prepared. You can add more if you want to. Just kind of gauge from your batter. And then I took another apple and I just did slices, and I'm going to put those on top as well. And I waited a little long before I did this, but I took a pretty good slice of a fresh lemon, and I took about a little more than half of the slice, and I squeezed it into my chopped apples. As you can see, it didn't take long for those to oxidize already. So if you have lemon on hand, I recommend as soon as you cut them to put lemon on it. It will help keep them from turning brown. And it also adds really good flavor. I think lemon's usually used in apple pie in the recipes of traditional apple pie that I've made anyway. And it also adds a bit of freshness and just brings out the flavor. And then with the rest of the lemon, I put it over the slice pieces. Okay. All right, so I think that is mixed up pretty well. Now as far as spices go, you can kind of use your own judgment on that. I am going to take some ground cinnamon and put about 3/4 of a teaspoon. You can add more if you like. I'm also going to put a couple dashes, I can get it out, of ground clove. A few dashes. That's probably less than 1/8 of a teaspoon. And then I'm also going to put a little bit of nutmeg in there as well. But primarily cinnamon is what I want to stand out. Okay, get that nice mixed together. And then I do believe that's it. Apples. So I'm going to go ahead and just mix the apples in. And then what I did, now the skin of the apple has a lot of nutrients and fiber. You know, we usually eat that, but I'm going to share with the deer so nothing gets wasted. So the skin and the core is going to go outside here in a moment. So I might as well give them a little treat today too. So just go ahead, take your apples, fold that in. So they're all mixed in there. And now as far as pie pans go, you can use a regular pie pan. I don't recommend a deep dish, like a rectangular pan. I think that would work if you don't have a pie plate. As long as it's not too thick, that the ratio for length or width to thickness You want it a little bit bigger in your length or your circumference than the height. So it will cook through and through. So what I have here, this is a 11-inch circumference. I don't know what that is in metric, but it's a 2-inch in height. So it's pretty big. It's pretty wide and on the shallow side. And so I have a clean paper towel here, and I have about a tablespoon of butter, and I'm going to kind of grease the pan with that. Now this is stoneware, and the more it's used, the better it gets. It gets kind of seasoned, kind of like cast iron does in that regard, if you've ever used cast iron, but it gets real seasoned and becomes non-stick. But just to ensure that, I'm adding just 1 more tablespoon of butter. So really for an entire pie, that's very little oil, and this makes its own crust too, which is wonderful. And then once you've greased that, then you just pour the ingredients, your mixture, in there. Scrape that, but good. And I spread it around a little bit, make sure it's nice and even. And I've already preheated my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And I will bake this for 40 minutes. Now I just want to give it a little jiggle. Make sure that's even. I'm going to take my apples, and then I'm just going to place them around. You can overlap them if you want. They will shrink down, you know, when they cook, so I want to be sure that it's nice and pretty, and I think that will probably do just fine. All these little extras in here. And do it however you want. The first time I made this, the apples dried out, so I think to prevent that this time around, I'm going to melt a little more butter, take my pastry brush, brush that on, and then just add a little bit of sugar on top, and the two combined are going to help to retain that moisture. So I will be right back with that. So this is hot, but because everything is incorporated, I'm not going to have to worry about the eggs at this point. So this is a basting brush, but I only use it for baking. I don't want it dripping on there, but I'm just going to paint some butter on top. I think that will do the trick. Okay, so I think that'll do. And I'm actually going to take some regular sugar this time around. And just lightly sprinkle that on top. Okay, well that's it. So I'm going to pop this in the oven, let that do its thing, and I will see you back here when it's done. Here it is, fresh out of the oven. Doesn't that look wonderful? And it smells even better here. And by brushing on the butter and sprinkling the sugar did the job, kept those apples nice and soft and moist. As you can see, it's golden brown around the edges and very lightly in the center, just the way I wanted. And because this is stoneware, food does take a little bit longer to bake or cook in it, so I wound up going for 50 minutes. And because I forgot the pecans, I couldn't believe it. I'm so bummed because the first time I made it, I chopped up pecans and it added wonderful richness and flavor to it. And then I'm just going to chop up those pecans and sprinkle them on top. I think that'll come together just wonderfully. So when this has finished cooling, we'll take a little sample of this together and see what our neighbors think. Well, here we go. All set up with a nice slice of apple pie, and I ground up the pecans and sprinkled them on top instead of inside, just to give that extra layer and depth of flavor. Have a nice hot latte. And our neighbors, who did not really want to be on YouTube, gave me a thumbs up on this, thought it was really different. One in particular, she really liked it a lot, especially with the butter pecan ice cream. And the other, she thought it was good but different. And I think she's expecting more of a traditional apple type pie. And she's really very much a textural person. But once she got used to the difference, I thought she described it perfectly and said that it reminded her of bread pudding, like an apple pie bread pudding. And I thought that was a really great description. And I think it has wonderful flavor. I like it very, very much. So now I will show you what it looks like. You kind of cut into it a little bit. You can see how it forms its own crust. It's very, very moist on the inside. The ice cream, or if you can't do dairy, a little ice cream or whipped cream substitute would be very nice. But the ice cream, the creaminess of it, all the different textures and flavors work really well together. It's very appley and wonderful spices. So there you are. Okay, let me know if you make this. I hope you will. And I hope you will enjoy it just as much. Okay, well, take care, everyone. Thanks again for being here, joining in with me as always, and I will see you soon. Okay, so we have corn on the cob, potato salad, ooh, wonderful kebabs from our neighbors. Was that kielbasa and mushrooms and shrimp, some sauce, and a broccoli, macaroni, bacon salad, and my husband's famous tri-tip. There we go. Yum, tri-tip. Okay, I think that pretty much covers it. What do you think, Lucy? Oh, you think so too? She sure does.
This one here